a prison psychologist?
I'm a specialist in mood, stress, anxiety, and traumas. And I did start my career in prisons.
Hey, it's Kyle Sandler from federalprisontipscom along with
Jason.
Jason, just Jason. Jason Voucherbeck, 8UpJ on all social media. We are the 10 Toast Podcast. Dr. Monica's here. Monica, what's your last name?
Dr. Monica Vermani.
Dr. Monica Vermani. You're from Canada.
Canadian.
You're Canadian.
I'm Canadian. I'm from Toronto.
But we don't just have any doctor
No.
in the house. You're a prison psychologist?
I'm a specialist in mood, stress, anxiety, and traumas. And I did start my career in prisons and have moved up to different hospitals with forensics as well as mood and anxiety disorders. I have a private practice. I've worked with brain and spinal cord injury patient at UHN. Lots of experience specializing in, again, mood, high stress, anxiety, and traumas.
Wow.
Yeah, we were just in a deep conversation. That's why I couldn't speak when you were like, Jason. I'm like, Jason, because the subject we were just on was pretty crazy. We're going to get into some other stuff first, though. You said you worked in prisons. Why did you want that job?
I think when I was younger, I started my career working with abused women and children, then started working with women in prison. I actually did it with the motive of toughening up a bit. I thought if I can work in the extremes, I can do everything in the middle. That was my logic. And so when we do internships and practicums in school, you have a choice of where you want to be and where you want to specialize. And the girl I was, I guess, growing up was a little bit more timid and shy and quiet. And a part of me was like, well, let me learn the extremes. Let me get training from the experts that do the hard work and see if that works for me. And it did, because working with women in prison led me to working with men in prison. I did forensics at a hospital. I worked with anxiety disorders that were extremes. And I've become an expert where I don't really turn around to say I can't work with something that's too tough. If anything, I've had the training to work with extreme symptoms. So anybody on average that has mild symptoms, it's not that hard to bring in the tool set that help them conquer it.
Yeah. So when you say forensics, what do you mean by that?
Forensics are anything related to correctional facilities, right? And doing a deep dive into looking at your past, your rate of recidivism, where you might repeat offending, and it helps you look at mood, anxiety, and stress in a prison or correctional facility.
Okay. So you said you started out in the females, right?
Yeah.
What's the difference between the men and the females issues you feel like? Is it the same or is it different?
You know, it's different. Well, being a female, I was also my own comfort level, right? Like with women initially, there was a level of, it was funny. Women end up initially being really hard on you as a protective way to, protect themselves. And then once they soften, young offenders saw me like a sister figure or a role model. And other women saw me as hope, like the mother they never had or the nurturing figures that they maybe missed out on. And they were like, you know what? You give me hope that I can be a better version of me. I'm self-made. I'm not someone who came from a family of doctors. I come from immigrant parents. Then, sometimes talking to people down to earth and just relating to their story. The stories don't matter to me. It's not what got you there. It's about who do you want to be here and now and correct and continue. How do we move forward so that you can be the person you want to be versus the one that you got stuck in being? And many times we don't realize our symptoms are the reason why we're holding ourselves back from having the life we want.
So having a mental health job in prisons in Canada, did you get to do, so in federal prison, Jason and I did time in federal prison.
Mm-hmm.
And in the federal prison system, they'll tell you that no matter what your job is, whether you're the psychologist or a teacher, you're a correctional officer first. So a lot of the people that I've encountered during my prison experience who were psychologists or counselors, it was always like
A fake job.
it was a fake job. It was like really gruff, and it was all
I think
about.
there's a little bit of smoke and mirrors. Like, we all come in with a bit of a facade to protect ourselves, whether you're a professional or you're an inmate.
Yeah, but it's not that. What it is they have to be a guard first. So they have to treat you. They're not allowed to get friendly with you or get on a level of that conversation. So it's like
As therapy, it's different.
And I guess culturally, it's probably a lot different up in Canada.
It's got to be
It could
because
be.
they're like, oh, we have people for you to talk to. No, you don't, because they treat you just like an inmate. They're not allowed
Don't get me
to
wrong.
be outside that.
Our funding is tight, and so as much as there's resources, there's not resources for everyone. I was at one point in a correctional facility just doing suicidal extreme crises. And so I would come down for 4 days every week and just see the people who were in extreme need, and it was to help them not hurt themselves or hurt others. And so, our resources are a little bit more limited because our funding is a little more tight at times. And so not everybody got to see a therapist. But there were treatment, group programs, and there were educational programs. There were things that we were running for people in groups to have, healthier coping skills for addictions, healthier coping skills for self-esteem, or to break the cycle of anger and irritability that we sometimes personalize our life stories, and we don't realize that, again, we're not the stories of where we came from, our blueprints, our parents, our abuse. We're more than that. But it's about giving yourself compassion and love versus being hard on yourself and hard on others. Many of us have trust issues. So when you're talking about the facade, yeah, as a professional, even when I started working in men's prisons, I worked with sex offenders for a period of time. Then I worked with people that were suicidal. Initially, everybody looks at you like, what are you going to do for me? But then when you build rapport and you build connection, the vulnerabilities come out. The guards come down and they realize if you're truly there to help someone, you're holding them in compassion to realize they're not their stories. They're more than that. Everybody's story, in my opinion, shows you a skill set of resilience, coping skills, not knowing better, or being in a place where you're repeating cycles and don't know how to break it. We do the best we can with what we know. How are you going to know more if you don't interact and have exposure to people who can teach you how to be more?
No,
teach
no,
you how to be better.
I agree with it, because that was one of the conversations we had before coming live. The thing is what a lot of people don't understand is when I went to the SHU one time, I only did 2 weeks, and I thought 2 weeks was like 2 months.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know how to handle it. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to lose it. How do you sit in this little box? And I'll never forget this old timer. He was across the hallway from me. He's like, man, lay down, get out of that window, man. Just lay down and rest your neck. And I'm like, dude, I'm going crazy. And he's like, you'll be just fine, dude. Just lay down, work out, read your book, do something. I don't care what it is, but get out of that window. You're going to drive yourself crazy. So once I got out of there, I asked him, he came out of the SHU too, and I said, man, how do you do it? And he says, man, he's like, dude, I didn't have nothing growing up. He says, I didn't have anything. It was no different to me. I didn't have anything. And I didn't understand it. So I started looking back, and I'm like, 99% of the black dudes can just lay around. They don't have no issues. So I started asking them, like, man, how do you do it? And they're like, bro, I got hand-me-down shoes. I didn't get nothing. I didn't have nothing. He goes, we went without. He's like, my dad was in prison. My uncle went to prison. I grew up seeing this stuff. He says, it's nothing new to me. He says, it's you rich kids or people that came from good families. You had a lot in life. You don't know how to deal without.
Culture shock.
It's a culture shock.
It's also about you realizing an empty mind is the devil's playground. Most of us have anxiety, self-doubt, fear, and that is where your mind's ruminating, catastrophizing, think about worst case scenarios. But if you grew up in a challenging environment, you're living what your norm was. There's chaos. And learning to be silent amongst chaos is a skill. And sometimes when people have challenging environments growing up, you are more resilient because you're able to be silent amongst the chaos. But if you didn't have chaos in your life, and this is the first time something challenging has come to you, it does break your reality of your mold of what you knew, and fear of uncertainty kicks in, the anxiety of the unknown.
Yeah, that's
And
why I was.
for everybody else, it was known.
Yeah.
They're like, this is normal. My dad did it. My uncle did it. And doesn't mean it's healthy, but it's also comfortable. That's one reason why people repeat cycles of joining in to abusive relationships. If you grew up with abusive parents, then you sometimes attract an abusive partner because sometimes chemistry is often familiarity. I know this environment. I know how to function here. Doesn't mean it's healthy. And
That's a
it's
good way of
important
looking
for
at
us
it.
to look at, why do I repeat cycles? Because I haven't had time to pause, reflect, and actually notice, how do I break the cycle? How do I feel worthy and deserving of better? How do I look at my life in comparison? When I see somebody I judge as lesser than me, I realize I grew from there. When I see somebody I judge as better than me, I can acquire skill and become it. Many of us choose friends at our level and below. So we're just repeating cycles because we're in the same environments. Choosing people at your level and above are also resources, mentors, colleagues, or also choosing stories that are so different from you that it inspires you to be better.
Yeah.
Or
So
there's a lot of these things with mood and mental health and psychology that point to, you say cycle. So, I mean, do you have recidivism for a lot of people is
Yeah.
a cycle? I mean, are you
Even
able to
with
sit with
symptoms.
somebody as a client or on your couch and kind of know, all right, if we can't figure this out, this person is going back to prison?
Yeah. You know what? There is a questionnaire we do in forensics where you look at the rate of recidivism, where you notice, are there certain things that make this person likely to reoffend? And there are factors where history repeats itself, or if this person doesn't have the coping skills or goes back to an environment that is dark, chaotic, and abusive, that they're likely to come right back. I used to have young offenders who says, leave and then come back. And I said, what got you back? And they're like, life here is better. I'm like, are you kidding? Well, I got meals on my table. I got people like you to care for me. It's better than going home. And it broke my heart to hear that. But young offenders sometimes were reoffending to just come back to jail because it was nicer.
And this is Canada.
That is Canada.
Yeah, but
That's not in America. I mean,
Todd
it
Christie.
happens in America too, but I've always
There's
heard
a
that Canadian
safe, structured
prisons were
environment.
better.
Children crave structure and safety.
do.
And if you have chaotic parents with a lot of abuse going on, it's a chaotic environment. They crave safety, groundedness. How do you have that if you don't have, mealtime set, if you don't have like bedtime set? We don't realize if our parents haven't done their healing with their anxiety, their depression, their traumas. When you're in pain, you spill over onto others. You don't mean to, but you're just spilling over onto others with symptoms, traumas, scarcity, and your children receive that as modeled behavior and repeat the cycle of anxiety, depression,
Yes.
self-doubt, self-scrutiny, not being good
Dinner
enough,
time.
abuse, bullying. It just goes on. Negative multiplies in more negativity. If you don't clean it up in their household, you just end up repeating it out there with different people, including your workplaces.
So it's like dinner time. So my daughter and my niece love coming to the father's house, which is my house and my brother's, because they say the number one thing they love the most, we all sit down together for dinner at a certain time.
Consistency, regulated, grounded, and it's bonding. We're born alone, you die alone. It's an individual journey. You take your first breath in alone, your last breath out alone. However, you're born into a family, into a society, into a workplace. You're born into environments with people, but the first one that you're born into is your family.
Yeah.
And so those structures and routines shape a little bit of sleep habits, food habits, exercise and breathing, meditation, or a calm state of mind, dealing with things. When I have parents deal with their anxiety and depression, their kids come to me younger and younger. The moment they have a breakup and anxiety is on overload, I have an email coming in saying, can you see my daughter? Can you find somebody for my daughter? She just had a breakup and she's losing her stuff. And I want her to manage her anxiety before she becomes me at 40. I'm like, you got it. What I love is when somebody has awareness. The first step to treatment is always awareness. Awareness of their symptoms, awareness of your consequences, awareness of your impact on others. Most of us feel horrible, guilt, shame, and blame. We carry it from our parents, and then we repeat it through us doing behaviors that we're not proud of. And then we're so hard on ourselves. How do you heal when you're hard on yourself? You're fighting yourself. You got to have love and compassion for yourself. Our parents haven't taught us that. Many parents have not done their own healing to show you how to self-love when you make mistakes, to show you how to be compassionate, to show you how to be kind to yourself and others, and remove judgment. We're all perfect and a work in progress. There is nobody out there who can't benefit from therapy because we're all fine-tuning. If I didn't do my own work, I wouldn't learn from people who are better than me to show me what better is. Then I just stay stuck in the cycle. Same shit, different day,
Yeah.
hamster on the wheel.
Well, Todd Christie on, his podcast, he talks about what his wife, and they said something on the lines. I know you've seen the podcast or this clip. He said life is actually easier in prison. And
It's
this is coming
structured
from
routine.
a millionaire. And the reason why he said it was is because he's like, I had no stress, no worries. I didn't have to worry about it. The bills were paid. The lights were on. The meals were there. I just got up and just had to breathe. That's it. I didn't have to do anything else. And he's
Can I
like,
tell
I'm
you
not going to lie.
something?
It's actually a good step back. More successful people that when I was in federal prison at Montgomery's, where I was around the most success. And these guys were worth tens of millions of dollars. And they swore up and down. I had this one I used to walk the track with. He said, this 6 months has been the best 6 months treatment for me in my entire life.
Who
And
was
I'm
that?
like, the tennis player,
Oh, yeah.
the younger one that was from West Palm that moved to Mississippi. He's in the insurance. I don't want to say his name. He's in the insurance business. And he got a 6-month bid. He did not watch his kids grow up, didn't get to do anything because all he believed in was work and the business. Everything can't run without him.
Yeah.
He went to prison and his business is still running. Everything is still going. And now I'm friends with him on Instagram, and I literally see his pictures he's with his family 24/7 and smiling. His pictures before and now are not even the same.
I got to give you a story. So I meditate. I've been fortunate that when my dad was sick growing up, I had meditation teachers coming to the house. So I learned how to meditate when I was about 10, and I've done different types of meditation to learn and formulate. Moral of the story, I ended up going to a silent retreat where you don't talk for 11 days. Was the first one I did. And so 11 days, and the premise is when you close one sense, all the other ones heighten, and you're forced to go inwards and heal. The monkey brain is a devil, an empty mind is the devil's playground, but in an empty mind, you get to process and let go and heal and just be quiet. So I'm telling you the story for a reason because it aligns with prison. When I went to this 11-day silent retreat, they ring a bell when you walk in, and you're not allowed to talk after that. And they take your phone and everything, you lock everything up, no stimulation, you can take a journal. And I had, at that time, I was young, so instead of getting an individual room, I shared a room with bunk beds. So there were 4 of us women in this room, and every morning at 6, the bell would ring, and we follow a schedule. There's a class, then you have a mindful organic breakfast, then you're assigned a chore to cut vegetables for your lunch, and, you walk in nature, you go for a hike, you go for a bike ride, you go for a kayak, and you go for another meditation class, you do some yoga, and then you go to sleep and you do it all over again. So I met 4 women in my room, or 3 women plus me. We had the bell ring, so we never talked to each other. We did a whole 11 days together, and the last day, they ring the bell for you to start talking. So after 11 days of silence, we start talking, and 3 of us in the room are like, oh my God, that was the best thing ever. Structure, routine, it took all the thinking away. I got to live my life with everything planned out, and I didn't have to do anything other than follow a schedule, which felt refreshing.
That's like prison.
One person in that group started crying, and she said, I hated every minute of this retreat because I came from a communist country, and everything was controlled there, and I felt like I just went back home to my communist country where everything is scheduled and structured, and I hated every minute, and I can't wait to leave. We all looked at her, and we had compassion. We gave each other a hug, but it showed me something. Depending on where you come from, that can be also frightening, where you have that much structure and routine. Some
Why did
cultures
she even do it?
You know what? I think she thought it would bring her peace because it's a silent retreat. It's sold as something to bring you peace and meditate. But don't get me wrong. I understood her perspective. We lack compassion for one another, which is where judgment comes in. I just assumed everybody there was loving it. And then when this girl's bawling her eyes out, as a therapist, I kicked in and I talked to her about her traumas related to her country that made her come here.
What country was it?
I don't remember now, but I know this much. She just said, I came from a communist country, and having the structure and control just freaked me out like I went back home. All I know is many of us look for somebody to take charge, create our schedules, make things easy. But there's a freedom in living your life on your terms. I think the key is creating your own schedule of what makes me a better version of me, what meal times work for me. And when you're having children, you're role modeling it. So you, of course, want to bring them healthy habits. But first, you got to be healthy yourself in order to bring in healthy habits. Otherwise, you're just repeating cycles.
So it's funny you say that because you're saying that monkey brain or whatever just
Yeah.
goes crazy. So the shoe doing time, I don't know if it did the same thing for you, Kyle, but after 3 or 4 days,
Yeah.
and when you get your mind under control
Yeah.
and you can control it, time starts flying.
I know.
Dude, I'm in my cell, and before I know it, I'm like, oh my God, it's already 3 o'clock. You can tell by the shadow. We got no clocks and radio. We're listening. I'm like, this is the craziest thing. Days start flying, weeks start flying. I did 6 months one time. And somebody's like, how'd you do it? I'm like, be honest with you, you just adapt. You learn to adapt to it.
It's a
Time
new
starts flying.
norm.
It's new normal. I said, your mind will change to anything. I said, but in life, it's helped me so much because you hear this in relationships. People get out of a relationship and they don't know how to deal being alone.
Yeah.
So they just jump into a relationship.
A week rule. In psychology, we call it 21-day rule. The first week is the hardest, a new norm, and then the second week is maintenance, and the third week is now your new norm in place and you're keeping it. So what you have to realize is the hardest is usually changing habits. And
Oh, it's
many
really
of
hard.
us, whether it's alcohol, drugs, technology, learning to eat better, whatever it is, the first week is the hardest to bring in a new routine that's healthier, exercise, whatever. But once you have 21 days under your belt, which is about 3 weeks, you start getting to a place where your body adapts to a new norm, whether it's sleep habits, food habits, exercise or breathing, or chaos.
Quick question on this.
Yeah.
So from the women in the men's prison,
Yeah.
what is the main issues that the women deal with versus the men?
You know what? I'll tell you right now, the one common amongst anybody, women or men, we're people. We have people problems.
I
And
get,
so
but I
it's
feel
not
like
about gender. It's really about what you personalize. They just personalize different things by different role modeling. Think about what your mother and your father was role modeled. And many men are role modeled to be silent, knuckle through things, hard on themselves, and tend to be provider type of mentality. And they're hard on themselves, because many of their fathers never communicated what they were going through. Stats show, married men are healthier than single men because you got a woman pulling it out of you, making you talk, making you communicate. But with women, we have community. We're role modeled different things. We're role modeled victimhood. We're role modeled sometimes being that caregiver who has to do it all and do it perfectly and keep the family together. We're role modeled different gender stereotypes, and they feel like different pressures. One feels the pressure to provide. One feels the pressure to keep things together. One feels the pressure to keep the home together or apologize or put themselves down. It depends where we come from. And what I'm noticing is, like, back in the day, there were schemas. Schemas are like maps in our head. Back in the day, once upon a time, there were breadwinners and there were housemakers, right? Mm-hmm. Most men were breadwinners and most women were housewives. And so now let's look at gender. Most men were breadwinners and most women were housewives. And so what ends up happening is there's a codependency. They need each other to function. But then the moment women start going to work, now it's changing. And think about abuse now. Most men, breadwinners, were abusive to housewives who were home. So there was a gender, a male hitting women. As we started growing and evolving and women started going to work, now a child who's born is not following the gender roles of, am I going to be working? Am I going to be home? Now you're like, who am I going to choose to be? Perpetrator or victim? Am I going to choose to abuse or be abused? And so now you're seeing the roles are blended. Women and men are working. And so children being born are not following, gender roles. Instead, they're choosing, who do I want to be? I'm going to hit you before you hit me. There's more violence in women nowadays than there is ever, because you're seeing things at home and you're like, well, I don't have to be the woman who puts up with stuff. I'm going to go to work and I'm going to be hard. So now we're hearing stories of harder women. But when I was working in the prison sites, there was still a lot of those gender roles of people feeling subservient, feeling like I have to put up with abuse. I need a man to provide for me. And now it's shifting. Most people are feeling like we're both working. We both need dual incomes. Things are changing. And the technology world being disconnected.
Oh, that's
We're
bad.
not talking to one another. And so as much as women used to pull information out of men, well, nowadays you see go on a dinner date and they're both on their phones. Who are they talking to? What are they talking about? Many people are starting to get confused about what real bonding and connection is. If we don't connect with ourselves, how do we really connect with others?
No, that's what I was saying because you thought it was funny. You didn't know what I was doing. So it was me, you, and Nelson. And I was sitting there acting like I was texting Nelson, like, hey, Nelson, I got to like that. And you're like looking at me. I'm like, well, that's what people do. They're at the dinner table sitting on the couch texting each other instead of talking. Yeah. And, that's like the next thing that I was going to go into was the fact that you were saying that women are more abusive. They do these studies now where you have like 2 women relationships, 2 men relationships, and then a woman and man relationship. And it's the highest one is 2 women. The abuse and the divorce is high. It's like 70 something percent. Then it's man and woman, then gays. And I'm thinking like, well, gay men. And I'm like, this goes back to why women are so nasty to each other. And
It's
women
not
want to hang out with
nasty.
guys because the 2 women, you get women together, they are just absolutely harsh to
unhealed
school.
people. It's unhealed people. When you're in pain, you spill over onto others with your symptoms, with abuse, with irritability, with judgment, with being hard on yourself
Yeah,
and
but you
others.
hear in the news, you hear anywhere else, it's men that are so bad. And all the statistics are showing backwards because you get in the gay men community, they're the happiest people ever in the world. Like they're all, woo, let's get it. Like we're just.
I can tell you right now that's not true.
Well,
when it
it's
comes down to it,
statistics.
I see so many people. It's not about the stats. You know what? When you see people, everybody's got people problems. We're
Yeah,
not
everybody's
feeling
got
good
problems.
enough. We're not feeling smart enough. We're not feeling capable. Social media makes us compare ourselves to others. We're in
They
a
need to get rid of the
place
filters.
of constantly not feeling enough, not feeling good enough. And it doesn't matter who you are, what gender you are, we're all facing the same battlefield between our true self and what is expected of us. Our thoughts of who we think we need to be are constantly plaguing us, whether it's in a relationship, at a workplace, academically. We're constantly hurting ourselves within the battlefield within us. We don't allow ourselves to live our true life and feel worthy and deserving of good because we're repeating cycles. We have mood and anxiety that is genetic sometimes, and our symptoms hold us back from living the life you want to have. Each and every one of us, the first step to treatment is awareness. Be aware of your genetics. Be aware of what role modeled anxiety, scarcity. If you had immigrant parents, many of us had scarcity issues. I totally grew up with that. You know, it's about working through what you know today can change. And it doesn't matter who you are. That disconnection with technology is affecting all of us. You know, I see more and more post-pandemic social anxiety disorders on a high. Stats-wise, the 2 things that have followed us since the pandemic is social anxiety disorder, fear of scrutiny, judgment, criticism by people, worrying that you're going to embarrass yourself, humiliate yourself. You're so hard on yourself, self-scrutiny and judgment, because you're worried about people's judgment of you. And the second one is generalized anxiety disorder, chronic excessive worry about real-life concerns. People like that ruminate, think over and over and over. They can't even shut their brains off at bedtime because they're always worried about what if this happens, what if that happens, catastrophizing, forecasting worst-case scenarios. It breaks my heart, but we don't live in the here and now. We're constantly in our heads comparing our past memories and being afraid of repeating it again in the future and feeling the need to control things so that we can minimize worst-case scenarios.
Yeah, so, but
Here and now, all is well. Here and now, we have a lot more that we can be grateful for, love,
but the
and
parents
have.
are not able to raise their kids anymore. Now they're relying on
They're doing the
video
best they can
games.
with what they
You're like,
have.
here's a tablet, here's a phone. Go behave yourself.
Yeah.
When we were kids, we went out. And they're like, don't
Yeah.
come home until the street lights come on. Dinner's at 5, and
I
then you better
agree.
get back out the door. Now it's like, here's a tablet. They're learning to play all the violent video games. They're listening to all these violent. Because one reason why we started 10 Toes is because we were going to start off just doing this for a side thing, talking about all these wannabe gangsters out here. Okay.
Right.
So I'm so sick of these kids these days. I was one of them. That's why we were going to do it.
Yeah.
I looked up to these criminal people. You know, I come from a great family, everything else. And
Because it looks easy.
it looks
have
fun,
tons of people I've
exciting, but
helped.
they don't tell you all the bad. And that was the whole point. That's what we were going to break down
Yeah.
each story one by one, what was the good and bad about
I'll
it.
give you some.
So well,
They're
the thing
great.
is, you watch all these gangster movies and stuff, you don't see the dark side of it. You don't see why they
You
told
glorify it.
they were looking at all these things. So they glorify it. So all these
Our
kids.
movies do it too.
Yes, movies do it too. So I looked up to it and I was like, oh, you hear, I've been around them because I've done a lot of time around these people, and you hear it so much. There's these young kids that pull the trigger and don't realize the consequences. They're like, what do you mean? I never got a spank. I didn't understand, like, life means life. Like, they didn't understand. They're like, if I had known this and I had discipline, I would have never done it. I'm like, it's too late now. Like, you're never going to see the day of light again. Like, and they don't even know the consequence. They don't even realize the consequences of what it means pulling that trigger because they're so
Sometimes it's
used to doing
substance
it.
related. People are so numb in today's society, legalizing weed, whatever. People are so numb that they don't realize the impact of their behaviors. I hear it. I've been very fortunate. Some of my patients have been long-standing. I remember a guy who got arrested, and the cop pulled him aside and said, let's go for lunch. when he got released. He's like, you're a good kid. You need to clean up before you really get yourself in trouble. You just seem like you have a dysfunctional background and you need to clean up. That kid came into my office, worked through his panic disorder, worked through a bunch of things, learned a trade, made a lot of money from that trade, opened up a trade where he brought in more business people, and now is killing it. And he always says, I'm so grateful to that cop in you for working through my symptoms. He saw I was anxious. He told me to stop the drugs and alcohol. And then I hear it every day. When people are numb, you don't realize you lack compassion and being able to connect with empathy of what you're hurting and who you're hurting.
Yeah, but fear, there needs to be a thing of fear though too. And you'll probably disagree with this one. I don't have no buddies, no friends of mine or buddies or anything that don't sit around and brag about the ass whoopings they got when they were kids. Like, dude, I had to go get my own switch. Boy, it was a bad one, but I deserved it. And I don't ever have friends that cry about it. We all sit around and like laugh about it, knowing that we messed up and we did wrong. And Carl will say this still, and he will agree with this. In prison, why do most people not do dumb stuff in prison?
They don't want to get in trouble.
The consequences.
Right.
It's not getting more time. It's about that ass
Painful.
whooping, right?
Yeah.
So people behave more knowing there's consequences. And this is one of the issues I have. And I've been saying this, and it's been aggravating me a lot. And this is where we got away with it. When kids were getting their butt whooped, kids were behaving, not doing all this crazy stuff. Now, they did cause trauma in some. I'm not saying it doesn't.
Consequences don't have to be beating.
Exactly.
Consequences could be, you not being able to get what you want,
Yes.
or allowances removed, or consequences
On
can
your tippy
lead to not
toes in the
going on
corners, all
vacation.
kinds of stuff.
You just can't enable people.
Yes. So
How's
here's the
that?
thing about it is this is where I have a problem is if my kid pulls away from a deputy whenever they're trying to detain them or anything like that, or I do, what's going to happen if you pull away from a deputy? Yeah. He can tase you, beat you, shoot you. Okay. But if my kid pulls away from me, I can't do nothing to him no more than you go to jail. So why is the government allowed to do these things, but we can't even punish our own kids? And it just blows my mind that we've allowed this to get so out of control. And we're seeing that kids are worse now than they were when they were getting this other treatment. And I get it wasn't perfect, but it's better than what's now.
You know what we forget sometimes, and I joke about it with sometimes patients, and I don't mean it in an offensive way, but it just took two people having sex to bring a child in the world.
Yes.
We forget that a lot of parents weren't equipped to be parents. They didn't know
They weren't ready.
that this child is going to rely on me for survival. That is huge. This kid dies if I don't change their diaper. This kid dies if I don't feed them or give them shelter and clothing. What we forget is it's a huge responsibility, but to have a child took just two people being intimate. And so many people don't know how to bring those environments to be healthy with discipline, healthy with structure, healthy with love and compassion, because the age bracket of having kids is also the prime of your life, where you're working really hard to make money, you're trying to buy a house maybe, you're trying to fit into society, you want to be a good partner, you want to be a good in-law, you're trying to be good at everything that you can't be good at everything. There's got to be a priority list. We put so much pressure in that prime of our life that we don't have time for the one thing that we really love, which are our children sometimes. Right? But I don't blame parents. Like, you do the best you can with what you know, whether that's from what your parents taught you, or you do the best you can with what you know by role modeling, by people that you look around and you're like, I want to be like that, or I want to be the opposite. I love when parents show up in my office and they're scared, like, I'm going to have a kid. I need to learn how to be different from my parents. And we come up with a strategy and a plan, an actionable steps plan to be a better version. And I've had men who had horribly abusive parents break the cycle to never lift a finger to their wife or their child. I've had women who've said, my mom was crazy with cleaning and OCD and bipolar, and I'm just not going to be that person that's, deregulated with my mood. I want to be calm. I want to deal with things. Teach me meditation. Teach me how to bring in structures. People want to be better if they know what better is. As children, if you look at children, we're unconditionally loving. Each and every one of us, if we drop ourselves down to a child, we spoke our truth. We're unconditionally loving. We weren't hard on ourselves saying, I'm fat, I'm ugly, I need to fix this.
I don't know about today. They're different.
But as you grow, you learn that stuff. You learn anger. You learn judgment. You learn criticism. You learn gossip. You learn sometimes behaviors that are not good. In Buddhism, they say, if by speaking You don't contribute to the silence, don't. The only thing that contributes to silence is speaking highly of people, positive, teaching someone like how to be better. We gossip, we, backbite. We're hard on ourselves, we're hard on others. That's all negative energy.
Not necessarily, because I like when people push me and are hard on me, because if they don't, I get
You
too
don't have
relaxed.
to be hard on someone to push them.
No, I gotta have
You
it.
can motivate someone with love and compassion. That's just your thought.
No,
Again, that's
Well, I
your
mean, in
judgment.
prison, they don't do it with love and compassion.
No, they don't do it with love and
If
compassion.
you saw a therapist, you
But-
might have.
But here's the thing about it is, it's funny that you were saying some of these things, because in prison, I hear people talking about all the time, like, if I seen a dude with a swastika, or if I would have seen this or seen that. Out here, they like freak out and want to like beat him up and shoot him. That same guy, the day he walks in prison and he sees all the crazy stuff he talks about, all the racism out here, that people just burn cities down, do the crazy stuff. You go in prison, it's everywhere in your face, isn't it?
Yep.
And that same person out here freaks out, goes in prison, and is just like, oh, what? I don't understand. And we're like, what are you talking about? Like, mind your business, stay in your own lane. You respect him. And then it's all of a sudden the dude with the swastika is over there talking to such, and it's like, I don't understand. They're like, just because he has that doesn't mean anything. He's still going to respect you as a man. You're going to respect him. Yeah. And I tell people all the time, when I tell them how racially divided prison is, and then you come out here and people freak out about it, have a meltdown. I'm like, but every day in prison for as long as it's been that same way. It works. Out here, you freak out about it, but in there, it's how it works. It has to work that way. If not, it'd be way more violent.
Yeah. When you work with people in these settings, you start learning to assess them, and you work with them to help share their story. Everybody's got a story of how they became who they are. And so when you listen to someone's story compassionately, you can piece together, oh, I see what was role modeled. I see what was hard. I see what was off. Sometimes it's untreated, like symptoms of ADD or anxiety disorders, or having a bipolar parent that was up and down in mood, and you're just always walking on eggshells, and you have trust issues. We don't realize each and every person's story comes with so much rich material that if we had compassion for one another to just sit down and know where their walk of life was, you'd see why they do what they do. Even in workplaces,
He
I
just
do
got
corporate
killed
wellness.
for that.
I know.
Charlie Kirk
It's called judgment.
was doing the same thing. He never got violent with nobody or anything. And it blows my mind that this kid came from a conservative family, come from a family of him and two other brothers. His dad was 27 years in law enforcement. And they're saying that, and here we go again. He went to college and got radicalized. And it's like, here we go again. You had a family train you one way and start having values. You leave that, go somewhere else. And the influence of other people are changing, and how that changed. You hear the story time and time again that people are like, my kids went to college and came back hating me because I'm a white male that's conservative, or just a white male that is successful, and now my daughter hates me. And I'm like, I've heard this story time after time, and it blows my mind that we're at the point now in prison, we're allowed to talk. You know what? When you have a problem, what do you do with Kyle when you have a problem in prison?
You go talk to the person.
You have to talk it out.
Hash it out.
Yeah.
You have to rash it out. You have to go talk. Now today, they're just pulling triggers. If they don't like you, they silence you. It's like, that's not my beliefs. Boom, done. Okay, but that's like, how did we get there? Like, what's wrong with these people? This kid, from what we see so far, was raised from a pretty good family. Yeah. Like, what makes them flip to
I think
death?
we need to work on how do we correct and continue. Because it's not about understanding all the factors that got here, more than how do we move forward and correct and continue. How do we bring consciousness of compassion and empathy and allowing people to be themselves as long as it doesn't cause hurt and harm to others?
Because, I mean, you see people on the internet cheering like, I don't feel sorry for his kids, his widow. And it's like, man, I understand. You might not feel
People
sorry
are
for
hurt.
him, but like his kids, kids to me are off limits on everything. Like, you do not bring people's kids involved unless you just don't.
There's a mirror always with each and every one of us. And when people are judgmental of others, you need to know that they're judgmental of themselves too. The people who are the hardest on others, I find, are the hardest on themselves too.
No, I agree with that 100%.
And when I work with people with anxiety disorders and, severe like perfectionism and stuff, I see how critical they are, everybody outside of them and their standards. And I'm like, I feel sorry for you. I have compassion for the fact that every day you are that hard, if not harder on yourself.
That's me.
The work in therapy. You need to unpack that suitcase of baggage that you carry from years, because we all go through hardships and it gets lodged in your nervous system. And then day to day, there's triggers. And those triggers just make you reinforce either healthy habits or unhealthy ones and patterns. When we are hard and judgmental of others, look in the mirror. You're hard and judgmental of yourself.
I agree. I don't know. Here's the thing about it. I want to get on the subject. We talked about it. You said that you did this. I don't know how long. How long do you work with sex offenders?
I think about 11 years. Yeah,
Men and women?
more men.
Okay, so guys, listen. I don't approve of this, but the thing is people need to know how these people think and educate. You need to be educated, because there's a podcast out there, and I think I showed you this one. And this guy was like, hey, guys, listen, I do not approve. I don't want to talk to it, but we're going to interview this sex offender. He was like the biggest well-known one. And they were like, we're going to interview him, and he's going to teach you what they look for and how they prey on kids, so parents can be educated on this.
There's so much out there.
There is. I understand. But one of the main things he said was that he always looks for if there's no father in the household. He wants to be the role model.
Yeah.
He
That's
wants to
grooming.
look at, huh?
That's grooming.
No, it is grooming.
It's more than that. It's vulnerability, and it's easy praise. And there was a church group in one of the prisons I worked at, a parole office. There used to be this church group that did a CASA program. And that program, people shared that, on a lonely night, in the evening, I can walk up and down a street and I can see young teenagers and, give them free booze and hang out with them. And it's easy. So they share their story of the cycle, but when you really break down their history, how many people of these type have been abused themselves, and they just think this is normal. You don't realize if your mom cut apples a certain way, you just assume everybody's mom cuts the apples the same way. If you've gone through certain forms of abuse, you just assume everybody out there when you go to kindergarten is going through the same abuse until you're in an intimate relationship. Then you start realizing, oh my gosh, people have different backgrounds. People have different families. We don't realize when you're living in your household that everybody else has a different household. It's as we grow as adults, we realize, oh my God, there's different ways to choose to be.
No, I understand that. But they all have a same type of a trait, though, too. And they also, from being in federal
It's not
prison.
one size fits all, though.
No,
No,
it's not.
it isn't.
I get that.
Thank
But there's majority of them, and when you listen to their stories, they're pretty close to the same thing. Here's another thing.
The stories come with some dysfunction in their childhood.
Yeah, no,
some
no.
abuse.
Well, I mean, I will say this though: when you're at a at the camp there is none, but when you're at a lower medium, there are.
Yeah.
And a majority, not all of them, but a majority of them, you can look at them and tell that that's what they're
Yes.
there for.
Yes, you can look at them. And second of all,
People
I
change.
thought they were for little girls. Majority of them are in there for little boys. It blew my mind. I was like,
But some of that is because once upon a time they've had the same experience. And when you talked about earlier, like cross-wiring, sometimes I've had patients come in and say, I was abused as a kid by a male, and I wonder if that made me choose, my partners according to that abuse. And you know what? I can't tell you, but it's about helping people unpack what they struggle with. And it's about you living authentically and figuring out, who am I regardless of my childhood abuse? Who am I regardless of my, traumas, my scarcity, my poverty, my upbringing?
yeah, but they all have, years you work for them and talk to them. I want to educate parents, because you were saying about the nanny thing, that so many women.
Today's world is
Today's
so
world,
different.
you were saying like now they like screen and put cameras on nannies, and I'm like, what do you mean nannies? Nannies are
had a
usually women,
friend-
so it's like I asked you, I'm like, women are that bad, and you said probably worse.
Well, no, women also can let their partners come in if they're being dominated.
Yeah,
And that was seen oftentimes. Realize also, like when I was talking with a nanny cam, it's today's world. Growing up, I went bike riding all day long. My parents had no clue where I was.
Yep.
And I was talking to a friend whose kid is going to university, and we were just talking about, him being kind of naive, and the wife was like, well, why don't we put, the phone tracker on?
yeah, Life 360.
So we know where he is. And the father's like, I don't want to take away his privacy.
Yep.
Like growing up, I didn't have that. I want him to toughen up and figure it out. But don't get me wrong, I get both sides of it. Tomorrow, if you really feel like your kid's that sheltered, if something bad goes on, I've had a patient whose son was at a party and due to fentanyl died at this party. And they didn't find out for like days later because all the kids were hiding it. If there was a tracker on this phone, it might have helped. But again, I didn't grow up with a tracker. And today, micromanaging where daycare centers are sending pictures of your kid at daycare, nanny cams at home so that you can see what's happening. Are we then constantly micromanaging everybody, or are we authentically living in the moment? When we're not living in the present, we're not connected to our experiences. We're constantly in our head, analyzing, thinking, worrying about things. So what are you reinforcing? Here and now, living in the moment with your senses, or in your head constantly micromanaging everything? One reason why there's more anxiety in the world. Anxiety is fear. Fear is self-doubt. I don't know if I can handle the next bad thing. To date, if you look at life, life only gives you what you can handle. You believe in God, God only gives you what you can handle. Mm-hmm. To date, you have handled whatever has shown up, even if it wasn't classy and dignified. You handled it. Now let's learn how to handle it better. But we also have to look at our psychopathology today, of today's world. Being well adjusted to a sick society is unhealthy. Our society today is technology driven. There's a lot of wonderful things. I got to FaceTime my dad while he had cancer on a phone when I couldn't show up at his doorstep. That was awesome. He got to talk to his sibling in India on FaceTime. How awesome is that? But when you're 24/7, always being expected by your workplace to respond in 24 minutes, or when you're always like feeling like you're being watched by your parents, helicopter parents, like we got to look at what is healthy and what isn't, and come up with mutually respectable goals in today's world. Technology addiction makes us constantly feel we're less than, and it also makes us feel the need that we have to protect everyone. We're afraid of consequences versus giving the tools to make people feel strong and capable to handle life.
Yeah, but it's just like the pendulum that it swings one way, swings back the other way. And that, the old saying says, my great-grandfather walked 10 miles to school.
Yeah.
My grandfather walked 5. My
I
dad
don't walk
drove a
anymore. I
car.
just
I
drive from place to
drove a
place.
Cadillac, and then my son will drive a Ferrari to school, but his son will be walking again. You hear how they put everything in play,
We want to
and it gets
give
worse.
everybody better than what we had.
But
But
then you
we-
make it so easy, they destroy it.
We enable them.
Yes,
That's
we
the
enable.
word.
That's the thing
We
about it. We give it
enable
to them.
people from learning the skills that really will make them resilient. As parents, we have one goal, that we're entrusted with these beautiful kids to give them the tools to be self-sufficient when you're not around. There's going to be a day as a parent, you're gone, and that kid needs to survive. Have you given them the tools to be self-sufficient, to be able to handle their symptoms, to be able to be people that can be good citizens to themselves, their partners, their children, and others? Right?
What is the most common thing? I want you to think about this one. I don't want a psychology answer. What is the most common trait or thing that you've seen in people that continue to go to prison or made bad decisions that ended up with 10 plus years in prison?
Impulsivity. I find people are so busy that we're impulsive, and we're so anxious that we don't realize we make mistakes because we're not slowing down to be present, to really thinking through. Instead of responding, we're constantly in automatic pilot reacting. That reaction can cost you your life. You've seen it. When I worked with brain and spinal cord injury people, those were people who were paralyzed from the neck down, the hip down. Some of those injuries were people pushing their parent, and the parent fell down and hit their head on a table and went paralyzed for the rest of life. A car accident from backing out. We're so busy in our heads with anxiety, doubt, overthinking, overdoing. We don't slow down to realize we are constantly in automatic pilot, and we're being impulsive versus thinking through things to look at consequences, being present, and actually doing things with minimizing hurt and harm. We need to learn, why is meditation on a high today? Meditation makes you go inwards, slow down, and be grounded. Even us talking today, most of us go from belly breathing to short and shallow breaths because we're constantly in our heads. Grounding yourself makes you think through what you're doing versus rushing through an automatic pilot. Impulsivity gets us in so much trouble.
Oh, it does. That's why texting's better than, I think, because you get a minute to think about what you're writing.
And
to me, it does.
People
slows down.
still have an issue doing that. Many
No, it
people
does.
respond in 30 seconds. Slow down. Think about it. 24 hours, 42 hours. Like, give it some time. People
I use
feel the
ChatGPT
need.
to think about it now. I just put in there like I need a good response to this,
That
and I read
sounds
through them.
robotic.
I read through them, and then I'm like, oh, that one sounds good.
Can I
Let me
tell
send
you
it
the
that
best
one.
way to do it? A voice memo. They hear your tone. People read text messages by
Wrong.
the state they're in.
Yeah.
If I'm nervous, I'm reading it like you're nervous too. But if I leave a voice memo, you hear my tone.
Well, no. If there's an
that slows you
argument or
down.
something, no, that's different. I
If
only
there's
do
an
it over
argument,
phone.
do it in person.
I do it in person or over the phone, so you can hear my
Thank
tone of
you.
voice. But
And
just
you can
in
make
just in
eye
response,
contact to have compassion. It brings you down. When you're just doing it with a bunch of words, it depersonalizes them.
yes,
You remove the emotion. When you see somebody, you remember the love that that person has. Your wife and you are arguing. You know what? You remember that this person's on your team. They're not
it's-
out to get you.
it's sad and crazy that kids are literally committing suicide now because what somebody says on social media.
Yeah. That one breaks my heart. You know, the AI case out there where an AI therapist guided a kid to kill himself.
What?
Yeah,
I haven't
that's
heard
out
this
there
one.
all over the place right now. It's the hottest thing is people are trying to save money sometimes. And there was a kid who had an AI therapist, and they actually went through the transcripts to find when it went sideways. And they could have stopped it if somebody was watching these things. AI is great in many ways, like you said,
but it's dangerous
ChatGPT.
another way.
But you know what? There are people lonely and anxious and depressed, and they are going to these supports, and these supports are causing them a lot of anguish, a lot of bad decision making, and validating what you're thinking. And you might be thinking some dark thoughts. You get the wrong AI in a moment, it follows your algorithm. It can support your judgment of doing whatever you feel is right for you. But what is right for you could be harming you too. You know, I had a kid during the pandemic who had moved countries, small town boy, came to Toronto, but during the pandemic, it was lockdown. He came alone, was, online 24 hours working. He wasn't stopping because he was so nervous about losing his job. And he had this great opportunity, making more money than his parents ever did. And he found me off Reddit. I don't even know what Reddit is. I've never been on it. And he called me up in crises and said, listen, I put on Reddit, I want to kill myself. And somebody responded saying, I had a doctor 7 years ago who helped me through that. Here's her name. And I found your name. Can you take me on? And I was like, so grateful that whoever mentioned my name helped this kid find an avenue to get out of his head,
Most people
which
don't
was
ask.
a dark place. But you know what, this Reddit thing, I actually have somebody who looked it up recently, and she was like, Monica, your post is still out there. Somebody mentions your name saying you helped them through it. But this kid, his life has transformed, but he had nobody to talk to. He couldn't burden his family. He didn't want to worry them. He didn't know how to get out of the hole. Social anxiety was on a high, and he was just video gaming and working all day long. And that's the reality for a lot of people.
It's like the weed thing. So many people are
Weed
like, oh,
is-
I smoke weed to calm down. And I'm like, well, a
Not
lot of
every
people smoke
day.
cigarettes. Yeah.
Anything you do every day will
they-
turn into an addiction.
An addiction. And then all of a sudden, all the studies say after so long, it actually makes your anxiety worse.
It makes you paranoid.
Makes you paranoid. And
then
they're
you
like, no, it
disconnect
does. It
from
makes
your
me feel good.
family.
And I'm
Do you know
like,
how many
well-
marriages have broken up because at some point they're like, you're not connecting. You don't talk to me. You don't watch me. You're just on your TV. And it makes you, it takes over. And you think you're self-medicating. Most of us are self-medicating. Porn, alcohol, drugs, food, comfort food. We're
That's me.
self-medicating versus learning to realize, well, what is my life like? I remember a guy once ordering a double drink. And I looked at him, I said, stressful day? And it was a social environment. He looked at me and he's like, what? I'm like, double? And he goes, yeah, stressful day. I go, shouldn't you be treating work than self-medicating? He went beet red. I felt embarrassed because I didn't mean to do it in a bad way. I was trying to be funny. But he was embarrassed because he probably had some social anxiety. Maybe he was drinking to feel comfortable. I don't know.
Yeah, but
he left really shortly after, and I felt sorry thinking,
yeah,
let's
but you
mess that
probably just
person up.
jabbed in it because he probably deals with, like me, I'll deal with probably 80% of my problems. But then the 20, I'm like, you know what? I'm so burnt out today. I just rather eat my problems away today. So I'll go get me some sweets and I'll start eating them away.
But if you do it every day, you'd be
No, I don't
300
do it every day. But I'm
pounds.
saying 80% of the time I work
There's
through my problems.
consequences from every day.
It might go to 21%. I don't know.
But deep
Then
down
22.
inside, it's okay to have a treat every day. But if you're eating a whole box, it's another story. Same with alcohol and drugs. Are you doing it? to self-medicate. And, we don't realize sometimes we do it in the beginning as a coping mechanism to just get through a hard period. But when it's sustained as a lifestyle habit, you need to question, if I need a substance to feel normal in life, I need to go get help. Plain and simple. We can't sometimes realize when something that was recreational has become an addiction. But when you're doing it every day, now there's a reliance on something to take the edge off life. Instead, let's treat life and fix it, make it more fulfilling and joyful so that you're connected versus learning to disconnect and be at the disposal of something. I remember when my dad smoked growing up, one day I said, I used to beg him to quit. And then the one day he finally quit. And I said, Dad, what made you do it? He goes, I used to enjoy this. And now I realize I'm not choosing it. I have to smoke. Like, I wake up, I have to smoke. I have to go here, I have to smoke. After a meal, I have to smoke. I wasn't choosing it anymore. It was choosing me. So he goes, I don't want to do that. I'm done. And he stopped. And that's what we don't realize. In the beginning, it's recreational. You're choosing it. And at some point, it has bled into a place where now it's not a choice.
Repetition.
And habit forming. We're creatures of habit.
Chewing
You bring
your
in a healthy
fingernails,
habit.
doing all kinds of stuff.
But remember, behind habits are always thoughts. My TED Talk was think about it. Thoughts are powerful things. Everything ever created or started with a thought.
It does. They say
Good or
quit.
bad, your thoughts shape your life.
Oh.
Which one are you reinforcing every day? It's a muscle. You reinforce negative thoughts, scrutiny, judgment, and that's going to get big. You reinforce gratitude, joy, helping others, being kind to yourself. That grows.
I read a book that says every time you have a bad thought, think of a good thing.
Yeah.
It works, but it's so
What you
hard
focus
to
on
do it.
expands. You focus on negativity, negative multiplies and more negativity. And when you focus on positive, and it can be as simple as gratitude. I wake up in the morning and I take 3 breaths and I go, thank you, thank you, thank you. There's always a gratitude that I woke up this morning for another beautiful day to
Is that why you
build.
look so young?
Maybe. But pure and simple. Gratitude, what you focus on expands. You focusing on good, or are you waking up with that sense of dread? I hate my day. And if you hate your day, why aren't you changing your life? And you got to look at what's the lack of self-esteem or the courage to feel worthy and deserving of better.
So in prison, a lot of people, and Kyle can tell you this, who's the most anxious, like just out of control people in prison?
I
Like
have no
they
idea.
cry the most, complain about everything, seem like the most miserable. The short timers.
Yeah, the short timers.
So people that have a short time are usually the most miserable. The guys that have 30, 40, 50 years, 20 years or been down lifers, they're the most calmest people here, and they're just so
It's called
forgiving.
acceptance.
They're just like, you got to accept it. You got to move on. Okay.
The 2 reasons we suffer in life: we don't accept people as they are, including ourselves, and we don't accept situations as they are. The lack of acceptance makes us struggle.
You know, another thing is people used to ask me all the time, they're like, Jason, how do you laugh and smile in prison? Man, this is not a place to laugh and smile. I said, or I can be miserable like you.
Yeah.
And they like look at me and I'm like, I read books and I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm just going to make it the best I can. They're like, that's messed up. You're never going to learn from it. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't want to be miserable like you every day. I'd rather
There's a
sit here and
choice
joke. He'll
every
tell you,
day.
Kyle will tell you, my whole bit, I was just playing, clowning the whole time. Like I just wanted to laugh, smile, and just, everybody, I didn't really cause no problems, but I mean, sometimes people get on to me a little bit, but my whole thing was I wanted to laugh all day long.
Before we go, can you tell us a success story of counseling somebody in prison?
Oh, I've had tons of them. You know what?
Like, what's the success? What's the success to you with the inmate in prison?
Self-love.
Is that
When you
is that
can-
hard for somebody that's in prison?
I think in prison or out, we have a hard time loving ourselves and accepting ourselves as we are. We have a hard time having compassion and love for ourselves. I always think none of us are blessed with the parents that maybe were perfect for us, but at some age, I learned how to be Monica's best parent. I learned how to take that little girl, put her on the shelf and say, hey, your adult version, we got you. We're doing
Right.
pretty good in life. I needed to learn self-love to get there. And I realized sometimes the ingredients in my life where my parents were too busy or they were struggling with their issues taught me self-love. And so in prison, when I have people mirror back a sense of, you know what, thank you. You love me and accept me the way I am. I'm going to start learning to take that in and do it for myself. When they get out, I find they transform lives. You give people what you want to get back. Give love. give joy, give compassion, give understanding. If you felt misjudged, you felt hurt by others, you felt abused, try to give what you wanted to get back and heal yourself by loving yourself. When you give yourself love, you're able to give back. But the one thing I realized is that is the key for all of us, to heal, to be better, and to feel worthy and deserving of better. We don't have to stay broken in environments just because you came from a broken place. And no matter what you've done and where you've walked through and what pain and suffering you've caused yourself and others, you can correct and continue. But the first way to do it is love yourself, forgive yourself. Forgiveness comes with love. You know, in Hawaiian prayers, there's a Ho'oponopono prayer. I gave a lot of people in prison and they loved it. And I even do it on my day-to-day practice. I'm sorry, please forgive me, I love you, and thank you. You're asking for forgiveness of the person, but you're also forgiving yourself. How you forgive yourself, like if you've hurt me, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, I love you, thank you. As in, I'm sorry for hurting you. Please forgive me for acting in a manner that wasn't in my highest and best or better. Please forgive me, as forgiveness is love. And thank you. Thank you for taking this moment. But the true person you're forgiving is yourself. Right. I'm sorry to you for doing something that wasn't in your highest and best. Please forgive me, as in forgiveness is love and compassion, to realize we're not always perfect, and that's okay. I love you, as in love heals versus makes you scratch the wound over and over. And then thank you for taking a moment to go inside versus constantly worrying about what everybody else is thinking about us. We are living in a world where that battlefield within us is our true self, loving ourselves, compassionate, and expected versions of what we think people need us to be. That battlefield is won when you can put yourself first, love yourself. There's a greater good, right? Each and every one of us, and anybody who learned self-love usually walked out of prison as well as walked out of my office with this level of, I'm going to be better because it makes me feel better, and I can redeem my own qualities of wherever I've come from. It's my redemption. It's my way of walking forward.
That makes sense.
Loving yourself sounds complicated, but sometimes it's as simple as when I have that little girl, you know, the quiet, shy Indian girl come out, I put her on the shelf. I'm like, hey, you're an adult version. We got you. We got better style. We're doing pretty good. Come on, we got you. Pure and simple. That self-talk. We all have a little kid under the age of 10 within us that we're always trying to nurture and heal and groom and realize it's okay. The mistakes you did, correct and continue. I got you. And when you have children, you want to raise them that way. But until you can't love yourself, you can't teach your child self-love either.
That is the truth.
That is the truth.
That is the truth.
Well, thank you so much for spending some time with us today,
Thank you so
Dr.
much
Monica.
for having me. This was wonderful.
It was. I
And
learned
you're
a
doing
lot.
a great job. I'm proud of both of you because
Thank
when
you.
it comes down to it, I think we all need to be proud of one another. We're trying to bring a greater good, and each and every one of us deserve to be worthy and deserving of better in our lives.
Thank you so much.
This makes us feel abnormal, doesn't it?
We'll see you next time for the 10 Toes Podcast at 10toespodcast.com.